ecosystem, not the individual elements of that. So we want to recycle nutrients, include animals wherever possible, rotate livestock, no poisons, create beneficial diversity, keep the soil covered, minimise tillage and support soil biology. Okay, the principles of organic agriculture, which are in the principles that are outlined in the organic standards. We want to produce food of high quality, and sound organic farming can do that. Not only the quantity, but also not only the quality, but also the quantity. You know, the organic farming is capable of feeding the whole world, despite what the chemical industry will tell you. The farming systems are based on biology, based on ecosystems. Organic farming increases soil fertility, even though we are not adding chemical fertilizers. We limit as much as possible the external inputs. In the process of converting to organics, there is usually a need for some kinds of inputs. Over time, the system becomes self-sustaining and the inputs are minimised or eliminated. No pollution. No pollution of the air, no pollution of the water, no pollution of the food. We want to minimise the use of non-renewable resources, and that includes fossil fuels, and protect the environment. I say I'll go through how we can do some of these things. We build soil biology by feeding the microbes with organic matter, not disturbing the soil and not poisoning them with chemical fertilizers or chemical pesticides, herbicides. All residues, crop residues, get returned to the soil. We use natural forms of fertilizers. We can use crushed rock, which can include limestone and rock phosphate, composted waste, manure, legumes. Legumes are really important for providing the nitrogen that the crops need. Some diseases need to be prevented rather than having to take action to control them. So we create environments for natural predators, and there are many, many different natural predators: insects, birds, bats, frogs, spiders. We also need the balanced soil biology, because a soil with good biology in it will suppress diseases in that soil. Now, we have to accept that sometimes there will be some pests, and if we don't have any pests, we won't have any predators about. One of the colleagues in Vietnam, he goes to great lengths to support the predator populations by making sure there are always some pests there. For example, when he's he puts little nets over the guavas, over each individual fruit, to protect against fruit fly. But he always leaves some unprotected so that there will be fruit fly there, and so there will be predators there to take care of that. He also grows a crop of corn continuously. As soon as one is coming up to maturity, then he has another one there, so that there's always some of the stem borers there. So there will always be a predator population. It's an interesting concept that I hadn't come across before, but I really appreciate what he's doing. Also, quarantine is important. I've done things I shouldn't have, like I used to do private gardening jobs and bring everyone's rubbish back home, and I introduced snails, and it took a long time to get rid of them. There are a range of acceptable pesticides that can be used under organic standards, and they're ones which break down quickly and they don't leave residues. But the problem is that most of them also affect the predator populations, the beneficial insects. So if we can eliminate their use, that's even better. Neem is one of them which seems to target the pests without targeting the predators. So it's probably the safest of all of them to use. So, but sometimes we need to use something in order to save a crop. So we can use various botanical pesticides like the pyrethrum. We can make them up using garlic. There are some mineral ones like copper sulfate, sulfur, and there are quite a big range now of biological pest control products. And you can introduce predators. There are companies which produce predators that you can buy in to release. There are this farmer I was talking about in Vietnam doesn't use any of those because he says they all have an unintended effect too. Even the sticky yellow boards that a lot of farmers use in order to attract pests, they also attract predators. So he said he stopped using them, doesn't use any traps whatsoever. Under organic standards, there are a lot of the livestock has to be treated respectfully. So that means they have to be free range. They cannot be confined, except for short periods. But the majority of their daytime has to be out in the open. They cannot be caged. They need to be able to socialise with their own kind. We need to prevent illnesses by a healthy environment and nutritious food. And this is quite possible. I worked on organic beef farm for 10 years, and after we got the organic certification and after we instituted rotational grazing policy, didn't have problems of intestinal worms anymore. It eliminated that. There are ways of doing that. So you do not need to use some kind of a medicine. And also protect the animals from heat, cold, sun, rain, wind, which means shelter belts, it means shade. We protect the environment. So no runoff into waterways. We prevent erosion. People are not exploited. So that means that workers are paid fairly. In order to create the biodiversity to protect our crops, then some areas of the farm are used for wildlife. It's the concept of the living fence, which can serve that purpose of protecting the environment and also providing habitats for the beneficial organisms. And natural vegetation cannot be cleared. So why organic? What's the purposes? Chemicals cause a lot of illnesses. If you look at a graph with pesticide use, particularly Roundup, you'll see that that graph correlates perfectly with modern day diseases like autism, asthma, depression. All of those correspond really well with chemical usage. It's very, very hard to prove that one causes the other, but it is very, very likely that this is why we have so much illness in the world now. Environmental health. So chemical farming does a lot of harm to the environment, including to bees. Waterway pollution is a massive issue. There are some areas of the world, coastal areas, which are completely dead, like areas in the Gulf of Mexico, areas in the Black Sea. And that's because of the chemicals, probably particularly the nitrates and phosphates, which they eutrify the water and prevent any life from living in there. We have it in the Darling River too. We have a lot of algal blooms. A lot of algal blooms are caused by the chemicals in the water. Nitrate fertilizers. When nitrates are applied to land, the average is about 30% can actually be used by the plant. The rest of it either leaches into the soil or it volatilizes as nitrous oxide. And nitrous oxide is a very, very potent greenhouse gas. Chemical farming also produces a lot of carbon dioxide in the air. Methane is an issue in chemical farming, whereas it's not particularly an issue with organic farming because there are methane consuming bacteria in a healthy soil which are very, very sensitive to nitrate and phosphate fertilizers and herbicides. So once we've got an organic grazing system going, methane is not a pollutant. Now, we've had ruminant animals in the world for 200 million years at least, and methane was never a problem because it was all recycled. Also, the cost. Chemicals keep farmers poor. The only beneficiaries are the chemical companies. If you are selling produce, it needs to be certified under standards. This provides evidence, proof to the customer that that the produce is genuinely organic. So every country in the world now has organic standards, and many countries have their own certification system. We have several certification schemes in Australia. It doesn't particularly matter which one it's certified with. They all have to operate according to the Australian standards. So organic producers must follow the standards of the country where the produce is sold. For example, if you want to export to the United States, you have to have certification under the standards of the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture. The standards give you a minimum guide about how to farm organically. So there are lists of acceptable inputs and lists of unacceptable inputs and practices too. So if you are interested in organic certification, you need to get copies of the organic standards to see how they work and how you can obtain that certification. Generally, it takes 3 years from the time you start, from the time you put in your application, before you can get the full certification. So there is a period of pre-certification for 1 year, and then once you've been accepted, inspected, and verified that you are using it, then you can go into organic conversion for another year, or 2 years. But generally, the whole process takes 3 years. Sometimes it can be shortened, but you have to have evidence, proof that you have been using organic methods for some period before that. The farm is inspected annually to check that the standards are being complied with. There is a cost. And so, in my opinion, organic certification is important if you are selling produce into a market where it is needed. But if you've got local customers who are happy with your methods, then probably certification is not so essential. Once the farm is fully certified, it applies the logo of that organisation. So here you can see the NASA logo, the top left, and the Australian Certified Organic down the bottom. And the others are from various different parts of the world. Okay, so I'm just going through, I'll probably be a bit brief on this because we've covered quite a bit of it too, but this is the things that are written into the standards that organic farmers are obliged to do. So prevent erosion and salination, no crop residue burning, protect water quality, and return nutrients and organic matter to the soil. The farm needs to have at least 5% in non-cropping areas for biodiversity. If it is more than 4 hectares, if the farm is more than 4 hectares. So this can be forest land, it can be a flooded forest, bushes, windbreaks, trees in the field, hedges, integrated orchards like the food forest formation, ditches, ponds, and just other areas where there is just a lot of diversity. Keeping records is very important. So this is probably the biggest issue for a lot of organic farmers. You just have to have excellent records of all of your inputs, all of your production records, sales records, changes that you make, all of those have to be documented. And that's really important when the organic inspector comes, that is probably the main role, sitting around the kitchen table, going through all of the records to check that everything is in order. There'll be a paddock visit too, but generally a lot of the inspections are done in the kitchen. No genetic modification. That's not allowed. And that includes genetically modified bacteria, such as the biological control for some root diseases on fruit trees. Normally a nursery will dip the fruit tree, the bare-rooted fruit tree, into that genetically modified bacterial product before it is sold, and that is not permitted under organic standards. I went through the conversion period. The planting material should be organic. Now, you can apply for derogation in some circumstances when you can prove that the organic seed or seedlings are not available or not with the varieties that you want. And in those cases, you can use non-organic seeds as long as they are not treated with pesticides. Now, in Australia, seed packets, if they have been treated with pesticides, that's it's usually fungicide. That's not the case in some other parts of the world. And for perennial crops, plant propagation materials from non-organic is permitted, but it cannot be sold as organic for the first year. Diversity, very, very important. Soil management. Well, soil management is the key to organic farming. So you use only approved inputs, return organic matter. You cannot use human excrement. In my opinion, in the future, we have to find ways of safely using that. But at the moment, it is prohibited, probably because of all the antibiotics, contraceptives, various other different kinds of medicines and heavy metals that are that humans consume, and that some of that passes through. If you're using animal manure that is from a non-organic source, it must be hot composted, and the hot compost will destroy antibiotics and hormones. You cannot use urban waste for composting. That's a bit of a, we have to find ways of being able to use that too in the future. Mineral fertilizers are allowed. Those are the ones like lime, dolomite, rock phosphate. You can use various different microbial preparations like EM, biodynamics. There's quite a range of those sorts of things. And things like fish emulsion, providing it's not fortified with nitrates, that's allowed to be used too. In Australia, Chilean nitrate is not allowed, whereas it is in the US for some reason. I don't know of anyone using Chilean nitrate here, so it's probably not an issue. It's a mined product, but because of if the nitrates are soluble, then it's not allowed. We manage pest diseases and weeds by prevention as much as possible, and by using approved products. Water should be clean. So generally, it's not particularly an issue for organic farmers, but sometimes when there is a risk of contamination, the certifier will require a water test. But generally, it's not such a big issue. Any farm equipment that you use for conventional farming cannot be used for organics. So you have to buy new equipment. If you've been spraying out herbicides, you cannot use that same equipment for spraying out a biological preparation. You cannot use bags like old fertilizer bags. They cannot be used. There's a lot of different guidelines for animals. Basically, no cages, access to pasture, protection, as I said before. You can get animals converted to organics, like for milk production. If you're buying in some dairy cows, they cannot be used for certified milk for at least 6 months. For meat, they can never be, but their offspring can. And for eggs, the chicks have to be no more than 2 days old. Nutrition. Animals have to be fed with organic food for by far the majority. You can use vitamins, trace elements and supplements. Like those calves in the picture, they're using the Pat Colby lick, which some of you might be familiar with. It's based on dolomite, copper sulfate, sulfur and seaweed. And I used to put it out on the farm where I was working, and it made a big difference to the health of the animals. They only take it when they need it. And so it was mainly in spring, this time of year, when pasture is growing rapidly, and it can be high in nitrate and deficient in trace elements and magnesium, because they're taken up more slowly, and calcium too. There are rules for weaning ages. You cannot use any meat product for ruminant animals, but you can for pigs and poultry, but not from pigs or poultry. And manure cannot be fed to any animals. None of you will be considering doing that, but it's fairly normal practice in some farms. Chicken is used as a protein source on some farms, and that is not allowed. It's possibly one of the causes for mad cow disease. If an animal becomes sick or injured, under the organic standards, that animal must be treated promptly and adequately. If it needs an antibiotic, then it has to have that antibiotic, even if it results in loss of certification. If an animal does require intestinal worm, the trenches, or an antibiotic, that animal can never be used for meat again in its whole life. And quarantine paddock for quite some period. Vaccines are permitted if they are needed. So you might need to get a vet to state that that particular illness, like pulpy kidney, must preventing it with vaccinations might be the only way of managing that. On the farm I work with, after the first 5 years of organic certification, we stopped using vaccinations and we had no issue. A little bit on honey, which will be a concern for some of you. The hives must be at least 5 kilometres from any possible contaminant. So that's from any pesticide, urban and industrial sites, the waste sites. Basically, that means to get honey certified organic, there's probably not much alternative except have them out in the forest or on a farm that is only surrounded by organic farms. So it means that organic honey, to be certified, it's not very easy to do. You cannot use treated timber or particle board for hives. It has to be made of natural, untreated timber or some synthetic material. The honey cannot be heated past 45 degrees. There's a 12-month conversion period. There are lists in the standards of products that you can use for cleaning and various different herbal products that you can use for the health of the bees. So if you were interested in certifying honey, then you need to get a copy of the standard and go right through them. The standards in different parts of the world are a little bit different. And so if you are wanting to gain certification for export, then you need to get a copy of the standards of that export destination. I won't go through some of these, but some things that are just, they're quite, they can be quite different. Like worm drenches can be used under USDA standards, but not in Australia. Vaccines must be used according to the USDA standards, whereas in Australia you have to get permission to use them. Anyway, there's just a few quirky things there. There are agreements between some countries recognising the standards. So Australian organic standards have equivalent agreements with the European Union and Taiwan. But for a lot of other ones, you have to get certification according to those standards. So just check the time. I've just got a few, I'll go through these briefly. This is about, the state of organics in the world. Australia's got by far the biggest amount of certified land in the whole world. But most of that is, it's grazing land in Western Queensland and South Australia, areas where the farms are huge, where you might need 2,500 hectares per one beast. And so its inputs are not, you cannot use fertilizers or herbicides there anyway. The areas are so vast, there's farms of over 1 million hectares. So there's a large number of animals there in those areas that do have organic certification for beef, and that has got markets around the world. So Australia has got more than half of all of the certified organic land in the world, but it's got just less than 2,000 farmers. You can see the different amounts of certified land. It's particularly European countries that have got, they've got the largest amount of farmland certified. In some of those countries, it is extensive grazing land too, like Uruguay, the mountain areas of Austria. The country with the biggest numbers of organic farms is India. These are certified ones. Many of those farms are very small, and followed by Uganda in East Africa. So the numbers of organic farms in the world, you can see there, vastly exceeds the number of Australian organic farms. The US is by far the biggest customer for organic produce, followed by Germany and China. Australia is it's quite significant. If you look at the figures per person, though, Australia is only €52 per person per year, compared with some of the European countries where it is vastly higher. Okay, we'll stop there, and we can have discussion and questions if you like, but I'd like to hear people's opinions too, and how important organics is for them, not just on their place, but in their area.
Sure. Before we open up the floor to questions, I'd just like to mention to people that if you haven't already clicked on the chat icon down in your toolbar at the bottom, you might like to do that because there's been a little bit of chatting happening. And one of our participants, Carolyn Sulgate, has posted some really great links in there if you want to look at those. And I might just get Carolyn, if you don't mind, just to introduce yourself a little bit, if you'd like to just take yourself off microphone for a second and do that. And then we might ask your question, which I flagged with a question mark in the chat area, to see what Alan's comments are, and then we'll open the floor.
Sure, thanks, Shelby. I won't take out your time. Alan, fantastic presentation. So nice to hear your passion. And Alan is kind of like one of the pioneers and one of the wisdom people in the room. So I'm all ears here. But yeah, ORICOP is obviously a national organic producer cooperative. We work with organic producers around the country, trying to grow markets and trying to, I guess, address some of the barriers around being an organic producer. Because it's one thing to like organics in your backyard, but it's a whole nother level to be able to take that to that commercial side. So we obviously work on that aspect. So more than happy. We also work on the national standards and obviously from an advocacy perspective with regard to how the government is managing the organic sector, particularly around GM and the chemical drift and all those kinds of things. So more than happy to help with that side of things, which is very off track from what Alan's just said. But yeah, I'm super happy to help with any questions or anything tonight. But Alan is the one, he's the wisdom man in the room right now.
Thank you, Carolyn. Now, Carolyn actually also posted a question, and I also see that Margarita has also posted a question. So we might look at those two things first, and then, like I said, we'll open the floor to questions. So Carolyn, would you like to actually ask your question to Alan? The one about your plastic hives?
Yeah, Alan, obviously my dad's an A-Prest Alan, so just so you know where I come from with this. And I just saw that they've just brought in these really cool hives, which are they're climate controlled. So basically, so the bees don't overheat. So instead of being wooden boxes, they're actually like these plastic, they are plastic, but they're climate controlled. So the bees' temperature is more stable.
Are
And
you
I just heard your
about an insulated hive there, Carolyn? Is that what?
Yeah, that's probably what it is. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I just wondered, Alan said that you can only use wooden hives in organics. And I'm like, but this is friendlier. This is like better. So
No.
I just would love to hear Alan's perspective on that.
No. I wasn't saying you could only use wooden hives, but if you are using wood, it has to be natural wood, untreated.
Okay.
That's
Perfect.
it. No, there's nothing in the standards to say that you cannot use some synthetic material or something.
Yeah. So you just can't use treated timbers in your
That's
hives, is
right.
what you're
Yeah.
saying. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that
perfect.
is
Yeah.
a chipboard or for treated pine. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Carolyn and Alan. Okay, so Margarita, did you want to ask your question to Alan? Do you want to take yourself off mute and ask?
We have a macadamia farm, and we have a lot of rodents, but they just like munching macadamias. So how can we get rid of macadamia organically, like without using poison?
So that was rodents, Alan, that we're trying to get rid of.
rats.
Rats.
Yeah. Yes, that is an issue, and I actually don't have an answer for that. In my garden, then it's not insect pests are the problems. It's non-insect pests that are the problems. So that's the birds in particular, but also I have to have fences that prevent other things from getting in, like rabbits and wombats. And I tried some method for rats, and I actually gave up. So I really should have spent time and done some research on that. My garden's not organically certified. I don't sell anything. Now, I must admit I did resort to using rat sack. It was in containers that birds could not get into, and I disposed of all the bodies I found afterwards. What I was using was that wasn't all that effective, was equal parts of carb soda, sugar and flour, and basically it just blows them up. And they ate it, but I don't know how effective it was. It didn't solve my problem, which was rats eating broad beans in particular. Yeah, so no, I don't have information about that. Maybe Carolyn or Greg might have some information. I did go to an organic macadamia farm several years ago, and what impressed me there was their biodiversity strips between the rows of trees, and they were several metres wide. They had a big mixture of different kinds of flowering plants, legumes, daisies, and this is, we did some insect sweepings, and the diversity of insects in that area, beneficial insects, spiders, was just so good. and that was helping to solve their pest problems. But no, I have to get someone else to talk about rats.
Yeah, like we don't spray or use anything for the insects that eat the macadamia. So there's things that damage the nuts. We just let it be, and whatever is bad, we just throw out. We're not certified. Or, I don't call myself organic or anything, but we try to avoid all those things. But for rat, it's just so hard. I have an electrocuted rat trap that I bought from Temu. I have a cage rat trap. I use so many different ones. I used something similar to what you said with Paris of plaster, whatever, and then you mix it with Milo and whatever. I tried so many things, but they're still around. Like I don't know how to get rid of it.
Could I suggest one ecological way of addressing the issue is to install owl boxes in your orchard.
We have owls, I've seen them.
They will, but the other suggestion is a 60-litre drum with some water in the bottom of it and a piece of wire across the top, a piece of number 8 gauge wire, threaded through an aluminium can.
I have done it as well.
Yeah, okay.
And I have done as well. I bought another one that has the lid. It has the lid, and then you just put something like peanut butter and the thing.
Yeah.
No, I catch nothing.
I can tell you,
Margarita.
I have tried so many things.
The other thing that you can use that is allowable under the organic requirements is vitamin D3. It will control the rats.
Okay.
I was going to say,
search it up.
I feel like I'm the hunter in the room. Okay, so we run a farm. We run an organic farm, and obviously I've got a hunting background. So when I talk about vermin, I talk about how do we deal with the vermin without poisons? Like we don't use any poisons whatsoever on our farm. So first is get a really good shooter and get a really good air rifle, and basically start to lessen the population. And the best thing is to put them in the freezer. This is very graphic, sorry for any vegetarians on the call, but you can pepper them. So you ash them and you create a pepper, and then you spread that all across your macadamia area, and they basically can smell the death of their friends, and so they don't come. So it's really hard to manage the population of, so all the producers that had all the grain, that they had all the mice in the grain and everything 2 years ago, some of them use rat sack, some of them use the plaster Paris, that sort of thing. But I think the peppering kind of just deters them. So it kind of just says this is not a friendly zone, and it can really help. So yeah, there's some really good recipes for the peppering. We do it with rats. We do it, I have to say, we do it with snakes. We do it with anything that basically creates a problem on our farm. And cockatoos, we have a really big problem with cockatoos here, and it works really well. It's very, very effective, and you only have to do it once or twice a year.
So are you allowed to kill cockatoos?
We are, because we only obviously do it just for the peppering, but you can when they're problematic to your farm, you can, but only for that purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, because we do catch
the rest of the time. The rest of the time, I can say I do.
Can we all just can we all just make sure that we don't talk over one another? If you want to say something, can we please make sure we raise our hands so everyone gets a fair hearing of their comments?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. And you can do it either manually or via the raise the hand option down the bottom of your screen. Okay, so Margarita, just to alert you, we will be doing some more work in peppering space. So if you become a member of BnBVarroaWarriors, if you are not already a member of BnBVarroaWarriors, we will be talking about peppering, and we're about to actually do some stuff in that space. So please make sure that you are a member so that you get alerted to all of that that's happening in that space, and we'll be able to put you in contact with someone who can assist you with that if you would like to pursue it. Okay.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So Alan's got his hand up manually there. So let's just go to Alan for a second. And then anybody else who has any questions, please raise your hand and we'll get you in order. Thanks, Alan.
There is a some kind of fungus that some organic rice farmers in Vietnam are using to deter rats, and I don't know what it's called, and I can't get any information about it. There's probably information in Vietnamese, but I haven't been able to find it. But that's something that I should investigate. I'll be going over there next week, so yeah, I'll see if I can get more details then.
Oh, thanks, Alan. That'd be great. And maybe you can share it with us and we can pass it on to Margarita. Greg, you have your hand up next. So if you'd like to say something.
Just regarding the Vietnamese connection, you might try, Alan, to contact Paul Christensen from the UNE, who has a partner from Vietnam, but is also has a PhD in organics in horticulture. So he might be able to help you in that
I have met Paul before, yeah. I've got some good contacts with organic rice growers in Vietnam, so I just need to get more details about it.
Andre Liu would probably be another good contact.
Thanks for all of that. Does anyone else have any questions that they would like to add, or any comments that they'd like to add to today's presentation?
Varroa might. My understanding from the literature I've read is that sanitation is probably one of the key issues of managing that particular problem, or it seems to be in the literature written on it regarding organics primarily from the US and other sources. My understanding too is that diatomaceous earth at the bottom of the hive has also been used in the past. I'm not so sure that it's to control varroa mite, but other pests in beehives that cause issues.
That is correct. It's often used for, and I'm no expert, so, but it is often used for small hive beetle. It assists with that because the diatomaceous earth actually is sharp with its particles, and as the pest walks across it, it cuts the pest and kind of shreds the pest a little bit. So they don't like walking across it, and they usually vacate or die, one or the other. You're right in saying that it's important with varroa mite to look after your hive in the best way that you can. Obviously, the most important thing is to try and minimize the varroa mite getting into your hive in the first place, and there are lots of tools that you can use to assist with that. Once the mite is in the hive, you're more than likely going to have the mite in your hive from then on. Even if you treat it with chemicals, there will still be mites that are there. Does anyone have any other comments on that aspect of Greg's question? Please feel free to raise your hand and comment. We also have an expert with us as well from over the other side of the world today. And Paul, do you have any comments on Greg's comment there? I'd like you to welcome Paul Shepherd if he'd like to take off his yep, excellent. Do you have comments that you'd like to share regarding Greg's statement?
I actually missed the question because it's lunchtime and I'm cooking, and I just went to cook to do something, and I came back. What was the question? Sorry.
Please ask it again, Greg.
It was primarily to do with varroa mite and sanitation of the hives and keeping a regular process of that to occur so that you know what you're dealing with and can deal with it accordingly. That's my understanding. It's a lot of the work that's been done in the US on the process.
I'm not sure if I quite understand your question. Are you saying that?
Well, I'm just really making a statement that okay. Sanitation is probably one of the key things, noting that the tools that the organic protocols put upon us don't really give us a great deal of other modes of attack.
Okay. Okay, so I talk about natural beekeeping and regenerative beekeeping. And as far as honeybees are concerned, in a natural environment, they propolize everything and they maintain a sanitary, clean system that's in balance and holistic. So it's a natural process. The bees know how to keep everything clean, and you know it's a propolis envelope that they live in, and they maintain it. You know, there's nothing that we need to do to make a sanitary environment for bees. Bees are very, very clean. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, but it does. But also we note that the native bees don't seem to have the issue that the European bees do have or tend to be more vulnerable to the varroa mite and its contagions that it brings with us.
Well, just like Australian bees have not been exposed to varroa, there was a period when European bees were not exposed to varroa, but somehow they managed to get over the hump. Of course, everyone turned to chemical treatments, and we can see where that took us. But bees have a natural ability for millions of years to be able to overcome the effects of varroa. I will be talking on this group in October and talking about how to take care of your bees without any treatments. And I sincerely believe that Australian bees are going to be able to get over this hill. You're going to lose some if you go a natural way, but you know, you lose some anyway, even with chemicals. United States is, they're like 50%, United States and Canada, almost 50% losses every year with treatments. You know, so your bees, Australian bees, are descendants of Apis mellifera, and the Apis mellifera seems to have the characteristics that will help them overcome the varroa mites. Is that helping?
It gives us hope.
There's hope.
Now,
Oh yeah, you're going to see that a lot of what's happening to you with the bees and the whole thing with, you know, them coming in and destroying bees first of all because of varroa, which you can see that was crazy. Now they're advocating that you treat with chemicals, you know, even with organic chemicals. I don't agree with any of that. If you understand the life of honeybees and you understand how honeybees work, they develop their own resistance. And Alan said something really brilliant, and that was that they are allowing some fruit on the guava trees to be exposed to the pests, so that there is a food for the predators. And in a beehive, if you need varroa to build resistance, and a lot of studies have been done on that. There's a guy here in France, when varroa first came in, he started treating. He then changed and decided to go natural. He lost more than 80% of his 80% of his colonies, but then they started coming back. And then he didn't have any varroa, and he started advertising for varroa mite. If somebody could bring some varroa for him, you know, that's how crazy it gets. So I 100%, I would say that Australian bees will overcome this. And there are things that you can do that will help you.
Alan, I see that you've got your hand raised, and thank you for that, Paul. I appreciate that. And stay tuned in BnBVarroaWarriors. We're going to be talking about all sorts of things. We're going to be talking about peppering, ashing. We're going to actually be asking for some Varroa mites ourselves. And Paul's going to be doing an amazing webinar with us a little bit later in the year, in a month or so. And so please stay tuned because there's lots of things happening. Alan, you had your hand raised, and I know, Carolyn, you had something. So Alan first, please.
There was some research came out from Germany last week, and I think Shelby sent it on to
Yes, I did.
the group, and that was it was very interesting that the bees who are in areas of organic farms have got much better resistance to Varroa than those that are more exposed to chemicals, which would be in the pollen probably. So yeah, an area of organic farms built up the resistance to Varroa.
Thank you, Alan, for sharing that link with us. And Paul and I had a wonderful chat about that in our chat area about that article. So thank you for that. So Carolyn, did you have something to say?
Sorry,
Yes.
I'm muted myself, sorry. I totally agree with Alan, I just think that we need to celebrate the strength of healthy systems. And like in a lot of producers' cases, they actually need to select for, whether it's sheep or whether it's cattle or whether it's bees, we actually need to select the animals that can withstand an organic system. So in our farm, we select for worm resistance. So if an animal, for example, needs continual worm treatment, they probably don't suit in an organic system. And I think the same with the bees, if they're able to manage that system, then they're probably the ones that are going to withstand, having some varroa mite exposure. And the other thing I was going to mention is in an organic system, you've got a much more diverse system. So you've got much more, it's a little bit like if you're eating 3 vegetables a day and that's your entire diet versus 50 things a day, and you've got lots of different diversity. And that's kind of the difference between a conventional farming system versus an organic farming system, where you've got lots of different things that you may need in your body to keep you healthy. And the same thing with bees. I think they're much more resistant and much healthier when they have a whole lot more selection. Like if you look, I'm sorry, I get actually really traumatized by the almond pictures, where they're literally taking an entire beehive or hundreds of them, and they're sticking them in the middle of an almond plantation and saying, go for your life, eat whatever you want. And all they can eat is almond pollen for the entire month that they're there. And that, for me, that's kind of like how you feed a varroa mite infestation, because you're literally just giving them, it's a bit like the sheep that just get put on turnips for entire month, and all they eat is turnips for the entire month. And it's kind of like, no wonder they're not healthy, because they don't have a diverse system. So I think it's all about diversity and healthy biological systems.
And I would agree with that, Carolyn. And I think that anybody who's currently living in New South Wales in Australia would realise that the almond pollination actually helped to spread Varroa pretty much around our state. And obviously the almond pollinators had quite a bit of clout in organising the pollination to continue occurring during that particular phase. So look, is there any other questions that anyone would like to ask? Otherwise, I will just comment quickly. Greg, one of the important things is to be aware of what's happening with your hives. Observe your hives, make sure that you're aware of how the hive is surviving and whether it's a healthy hive, to see if there are subtle changes, and that may indicate to you that you are starting to have some sort of an infestation. At that point, then you can decide what pathway you want to take, whether it be a treatment, not a treatment, a mechanical method, whether you just see how things go. It's really up to you. In BnBVarroaWarriors, we don't advocate any particular pathway. It's you as an individual will have information that we share with you, and then you can make up your own mind. Okay, any other questions? Any other comments? Okay, well, look, if that's the case, I would really like to thank Alan first for his organic presentation. Really appreciate the introduction to organics. And I'd also like to thank all of our participants today. I hope that you all got something out of it as well. And we've had a nice discussion after the presentation. So thank you for that. I actually found Alan's presentation fascinating. I loved some of those figures that you shared with us today. I couldn't I'm still dealing with some of those figures, to be honest. The fact that India has so many certified farms and we have so little in comparison. The fact that we have so many hectares that are, classified as organic, and yet we don't seem to have a lot of farmland that's classified as organic. It's quite fascinating, some of those figures, I think. I'm looking forward to learning a little bit more on that. And I'm hoping that Alan might be able to enlighten us a little bit more in another webinar at some point in the future after you come back from Vietnam, so that we can learn more about how we may be able to do organics better and actually help our bees in the process. So that would be fantastic. We'll obviously let BnBVarroaWarrior members know when those webinars will be scheduled, and we'll keep you up to date with those. So please consider becoming a member if you're not already. If you want to join the Organic Agriculture Association, I'm going to post their web address in there in the chat, and you can certainly access that as well. I'm just going to do that right now. If you, we will be sending a recording out in the next couple of days, so please keep your eyes posted for that. We look forward to meeting up with you again at one of our webinars, and we hope that you enjoyed today. If you need to ask any other questions, feel free to pop them in the chat just before we go, but we're close to time now. So stay up to date with scheduled events in our Facebook group. And if we have no other questions, we'll organise to close the webinar. And we'd just like to thank everybody for participating in our very first webinar tonight. So thank you.
And thank you, Shelby, and Julia for organising this. And I'm very pleased to be able to contribute.
Thank you, Alan. We appreciate your time and everybody's time tonight. And thank you for the people who spoke in impromptually, if I can even say that word tonight, when I asked them if they would like to comment on things. So thank you for speaking up and giving us your expertise and your knowledge. That was really appreciated. All right, well, in Australia, it'll be good night. For people overseas, in whatever time zone you're in, we hope that you have a good rest of the day, whatever it may be for you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.